Inside Options is brought to you by the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Manage your risks with SAFEX style options.
Hello there, welcome to Inside Options. I'm James Boardman. Today's episode is quite vastly different to what we've been covering. I'll be taking you through some literature on the subject of investing and trading. So, as you may have noticed, I have a pile of books with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's in some of these books and why you should be interested in reading them. So, if we could go up to the slide, I've got the first book I want to show you is, let's see from current slide, there we go. The New Market Wizards, Conversations with America's Top Traders by Jack D. Swager. So he also wrote a book called Market Wizards. Now this is a great book, very, very entertaining read. So quite a lot of the books I've chosen are books that I've really enjoyed. I found them very, very informative. I've learned a lot from them. And they're also quite fun to read. There's one or two more technical books, but mainly they're just really fun books that if you read, you'll get a good insight into investing and into trading and some of the techniques used by some really, really successful professionals around the world in a lot of different markets. So this New Market Wizards book is fantastic because he interviews really, really successful traders from different markets all around the States. You've got grain traders, option traders in the stock market, option traders in the commodities markets, what their strategies are, what their sort of biography is, their historical background, how they got into trading, and some of the basics of their philosophy on trading. So it's very, very interesting. Does a lot of talk about technical analysis, and that's reading charts. Fundamental analysis is when you look at a company's valuation, or if you're in the commodities market, when you look at what the farmers are growing, what the weather's likely to do. That's fundamental analysis. Technical analysis is you just look at what has the share price done in terms of a graphic. What has it done in terms of a chart? And these charts have a lot of different information you can use. So most of the guys that Jack Swager interviewed, they're really technical traders, and some of them have done amazingly, amazingly well. The one bunch that he talks about quite a lot but doesn't have a lot of detail on is fascinating. It's a group called Turtle Traders. Now, if you go out and Google that, you can find some very, very interesting stuff. These guys had a bet, and they said, I bet you can't take random guys off the street with a little bit of mathematical and maybe financial knowledge and turn them into really successful traders. As a result of that bet, these guys went out and trained people to be incredibly successful traders. These are the Turtle Traders, and they've been some of the most successful short-term traders in the markets in the States. And they're just one of the fascinating bunches of people that are covered in this New Market Wizards book. Now, another book that's really, really important in the South African context, I have a picture up here of it on the screen. That's The Effective Investor by Franco Busetti. It's the definitive guide for all South Africans. It's a very, very interesting book. It's quite technical, so if you don't have much background in it, it could be quite heavy going. But if you're an investment professional in the South African marketplace, if you studied this at university, then it's really, really a very, very good book to read. It covers all the stuff. The great thing about it is it's all turned into a South African context. So it's got sort of lots of graphs and tables and lots of information and a lot of very, very good sort of insight and a lot of quite technical stuff on how you should actually go about doing your daily job as an investor into the South African marketplace. It's really great that it's in a South African context, and I think it's really, really long overdue. It's been reviewed a lot. You can find it in just about any bookshop in South Africa. It's very popular, and it's a really, really, really good book. Also, check out the references, because he's referenced a lot of very, very important stuff to know. Goes into, from top to bottom, how do you invest? How do you construct a portfolio? What are some things you need to look out for as a South African investor? One of them is that a lot of our share prices are affected a lot by the rand. So he talks about some strategies, some stocks to pick, some of the ways you can manage the risk of rand price movements, some of the ways you can actually profit from a weakening or a strengthening rand by investing in certain South African companies. It's a fascinating book, and he's one of South Africa's foremost analysts, equity analysts of sort of big companies. He's done quite a few different sectors. He's also done on portfolio construction and is quite well known for that. The Franco Busetti book does cover quite a lot of interesting anomalies in the South African market, talks to you about what a lot of the fund managers are going to do, and really gives you great insight specific to South Africa. Although it doesn't cover a lot of derivative techniques and trading strategies, in order to profit from trading any derivative, you actually have to understand what's going on in the spot market and why. And reading this book will give you a very, very good insight into what the fund managers are doing, what the big banks are doing, why they're doing it, and enable you to actually get your view right on the South African market and enable you to trade profitably in the South African context. So that's really quite interesting. So The Effective Investor, very, very highly recommended, although it is quite a technical book. So mainly for sort of market professionals or people who want to get quite in-depth in their analysis. The other book I'm talking about is Michael Lewis. Now, he's written a bunch of great, great books, very, very readable. One of them is Liar's Poker, and that he wrote years and years ago about going and learning to be a bond salesman. So it's really quite fascinating, his baptism of fire into the trading room. What was it like working on a trading room floor in the late 80s and early 90s in London? So he went out and he went and worked for, I think it was Salomon Brothers. They were the biggest bond trading firm in the world at the time. He also talks about market movements. One of the guys he actually dealt with quite a lot there was a guy called John Merriweather. And John Merriweather had this iconic status. He could sort of do no wrong. He left to found Long-Term Capital Management. Now, long-term viewers of the show will remember from our earlier episodes that we actually talked about Long-Term Capital Management. There was this huge hedge fund that actually went wrong and crashed sort of as the emerging markets collapse happened in 98. They had to be bailed out by the Fed. So it's really fascinating insight into the machismo and the sort of infallibility that surrounded John Merriweather. And Liar's Poker is this amazing bluffing game they used to play for vast sums of money on the trading floor. And that's kind of a high adrenaline insight into their world. Now, the other book he wrote more recently is The Big Short. Inside the Doomsday Machine. It gives you a really, really good understanding of what happened in the global financial crisis, and it looks at one or two select investors who really managed to profit very significantly from the collapse in the mortgage market and the home building market. So after the break, we'll be talking to you a little bit more about The Big Short, this fantastic, entertaining read by Michael Lewis. We'll see you after a short break.